You wake up at 3:47 a.m. again. Your eyes open in the darkness, your mind suddenly alert, and you lie there wondering why this keeps happening. You're not anxious. You don't need the bathroom. You're just awake. And it's always between 3 and 5 a.m. You think it's insomnia. Carl Jung knew better. Jung discovered that waking during these hours isn't a sleep disorder. It's your unconscious trying to communicate. The veil between conscious and unconscious is thinnest in these hours. Your ego defenses are down, your rational mind is quiet, and your psyche is screaming for your attention. But most people do exactly the wrong thing. They scroll their phone, take melatonin, try to force themselves back to sleep. Today I'm revealing the 3 specific things Jung said you must do when you wake between 3 and 5 a.m. Practices that can transform these wakeful hours from frustrating interruptions into portals of psychological breakthrough. This isn't sleep advice, it's soul work. Here's what Jung understood that changes everything. Waking between 3 and 5 a.m. isn't random. It's strategic. Your unconscious chooses this time deliberately because it's when your conscious mind has the least resistance. During waking hours, your ego is fortified, defended, armored against uncomfortable truths. But at 3 a.m., those defenses are sleeping. Jung called this time the hour of the soul. The unconscious has been trying to reach you all day, but you've been too busy, too distracted, too defended, so it waits until you're vulnerable, until you're in that liminal space between sleep and wake, and then it makes its move. Most people treat this as a problem to solve. Jung saw it as an invitation to accept. Your psyche is offering you something, a message, a warning, an insight, a piece of shadow material that needs integration. The question isn't, how do I stop waking up? It's, what is trying to wake up in me? The first thing Jung said to do might surprise you. Jung's first instruction: when you wake between 3 and 5 a.m., don't try to go back to sleep. Instead, stay in the darkness and enter what Jung called active imagination. Conscious dialogue with your unconscious. This isn't meditation or visualization. Active imagination is a specific technique where you allow images, figures, or voices from your unconscious to emerge, and you engage with them consciously. You're not passive, you're actively participating in a conversation with parts of yourself that don't speak in words. Jung discovered this during his own 3 a.m. awakenings. He would lie in darkness, allowing figures to emerge from his unconscious, images, symbols, archetypal beings. And instead of dismissing them, he would engage, who are you? What do you want? What are you trying to show me? One of Jung's patients, a woman who'd been waking at 3:30 a.m. for months, tried this approach. I stopped fighting the wakefulness. I lay in the dark and asked, what wants my attention? An image emerged, a locked door. I asked it, what are you keeping out? And suddenly I knew. I'd been avoiding grief from my father's death. The locked door was my heart. Here's how to do it. Lie still in darkness. Don't force anything. Allow whatever image, feeling, or presence wants to emerge. When something appears, a figure, a symbol, a scene, engage with it. Ask questions, listen for responses. They won't come in words necessarily. They'll come as intuitions, feelings, more images. Jung emphasized, this isn't fantasy. Fantasy is ego-directed. You're creating what you want to see. Active imagination is unconscious directed. You're allowing what needs to be seen. You'll know you're doing it right when the images surprise you, when responses come that you didn't expect. That's your unconscious speaking. And 3 a.m. is when it speaks loudest. But active imagination is just the beginning. The second thing Jung said to do is equally important. This is Jung's second instruction. When you wake between 3 and 5 a.m., immediately write down everything. Not later, not in the morning, now. Because what the unconscious gives you at 3 a.m. evaporates by 7 a.m., like morning fog. Jung kept notebooks by his bed his entire life. When he woke in the night, he would immediately begin writing dreams, images, thoughts, feelings. He didn't censor, he didn't judge, he captured. This is how his Red Book was born. Years of 3 a.m. writings that became the foundation of analytical psychology. One of Jung's analysans, a novelist with writer's block, started keeping a journal during his 3 a.m. wakings. At first, I wrote nonsense, fragmented images, half-thoughts. But I kept doing it. After weeks, patterns emerged, symbols repeated. I realized my unconscious had been trying to give me my next book the entire time, but only at 3 a.m. when my critical mind was asleep. This is what Jung discovered. The unconscious doesn't operate on your schedule. When it has something to communicate, it communicates. And if you don't capture it immediately, it retreats back into the depths. Here's what to write. Everything. The dream you were having. The feeling in your body. The thought that's circling. The image that appeared during active imagination. The random sentence that popped into your mind. The memory that surfaced. Whatever is there. Don't interpret yet. Don't analyze. Just capture. Jung emphasized, the conscious mind's job at 3 a.m. is not to understand. It's to record. Understanding comes later. You'll notice patterns over time. Certain images repeat. Specific themes emerge. This is your unconscious showing you what needs attention, what wants integration, what's ready to be made conscious. But there's a third thing Jung insisted you must do, and it's the most challenging of all. Here's Jung's final and most important instruction. When you wake between 3 and 5 a.m., use this time to confront what you've been avoiding all day. Because your shadow, the disowned, rejected, repressed parts of yourself, is knocking, and 3 a.m. is when it knocks loudest. During daylight hours, you have defenses against your shadow. You distract yourself. You rationalize. You project. You keep busy. But at 3 a.m., your defenses are down. And your shadow uses this opportunity to make itself known. Jung would wake with uncomfortable truths pressing on him. Aspects of himself he'd been denying. Feelings he'd been repressing. He realized his psyche was using the only time he couldn't run away. The middle of the night when there was nowhere to go but face it. One of Jung's patients, a therapist who prided herself on being healed, kept waking at 4 a.m. with intense anxiety. Through Jung's guidance, she finally asked, "What am I afraid of?" The answer shocked her. "You're afraid you're a fraud. You help others with problems you haven't solved in yourself." She'd been projecting competence while avoiding her own shadow. This is what Jung meant by the shadow's invitation. Your shadow doesn't wait for therapy appointments. It appears when your defenses are down, and that's often 3 a.m. Here's what confronting your shadow at 3 a.m. looks like. When you wake, notice what feeling is present. Fear, anger, shame, grief. Don't push it away. Move toward it. Ask, what are you? What part of me are you? What have I been avoiding? The answers won't be comfortable. You might realize you're angry at someone you've been pretending to forgive. You might recognize envy you've been denying. You might see selfishness you've been projecting. You might feel grief you've been medicating with busyness. Jung was clear. The shadow doesn't emerge to torture you. It emerges to be integrated. Every quality you've disowned carries energy you need. Your anger might contain your boundary-setting capacity. Your grief might contain your capacity to love. But integration only happens through confrontation. And confrontation happens most powerfully when you can't run away. Like at 3 a.m., when there's nowhere to go but inward. You'll know you're doing this right when you feel resistance. When every part of you wants to reach for your phone, do anything but sit with what's emerging. That resistance is your ego defending against growth. Stay with the discomfort. Let the shadow speak. If you've been waking between 3 and 5 a.m., if you've been treating it as a problem rather than a message, Jung would say you've been missing the most important communication your psyche offers. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Now, let me show you what these awakenings actually mean. Here's what Jung understood about why the unconscious specifically chooses 3 to 5 a.m. It's not arbitrary. This time window represents what Jung called the darkest hour, when ego consciousness is most weakened, when persona defenses are most relaxed, when the unconscious has the clearest channel to reach you. Jung observed that spiritual traditions recognize these hours as sacred. Christian monks did their deepest prayer at 3 a.m. Buddhist practitioners meditated in these hours. Jung saw this as recognition of a psychological reality. At 3 a.m., you're in liminal space, not fully asleep, not fully awake. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the space between opposites where transformation happens. This is when new consciousness can emerge. One of Jung's patients described his 3 a.m. experiences after months of this work. I used to dread waking at this hour. Now I welcome it. It's when I receive my deepest insights, when my most important breakthroughs happen. I've learned more about myself in these dark hours than in years of therapy. This is what Jung called the treasure in the darkness. The unconscious doesn't wake you to punish you. It wakes you to give you something, some piece of yourself that wants to come home. But this only works if you do the 3 things. If you enter active imagination instead of fighting. If you write everything down instead of dismissing it. If you confront your shadow instead of avoiding it. The 3 things Jung said to do when you wake between 3 and 5 a.m. Enter active imagination. Allow your unconscious to present its material and engage with it. Write everything down immediately. Capture what's being given before it evaporates. Confront what you've been avoiding. Your shadow is knocking, and this is when you can face it. Jung would want you to understand, these aren't sleep hygiene tips. This is soul work. Your 3 a.m. awakenings aren't problems to solve. They're portals to walk through. Your unconscious is offering you communication at the only time you're vulnerable enough to receive it. Stop treating these hours as interruptions. Start treating them as invitations to your depths. The most important work you'll ever do might happen at 3:47 a.m. in the darkness when your unconscious finally has your undivided attention. If you've been waking between 3 and 5 a.m., Jung would say, your psyche is trying to tell you something. Will you reach for your phone or reach for your journal? Will you fight the wakefulness or enter the active imagination? Will you avoid your shadow or turn toward it? These hours are a gift, not a curse. You're being given direct communication from the deepest parts of yourself, the parts that know what you need, what you're avoiding, what wants to emerge. Tonight, if you wake at 3 a.m., remember, you're not insomniac. You're being invited. Do the 3 things. Stay in the darkness, allow the images, write everything down. Face what emerges. This is how transformation happens, through showing up when your unconscious calls. Jung believed the most important psychological work happens in that liminal space between sleep and wake, not in daylight, but in darkness. Not when we're defended, but when we're vulnerable. Your 3 a.m. awakenings aren't disturbing your life. They're trying to save it. Subscribe to explore more of Jung's practices for working with the unconscious. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.